What's up everyone? This is Andre from Design Reserve, and today we're going to be making this. A threaded object in Cinema 4D. Today we're going to be making a Cinema 4D threaded object. This is a technique that I found just scrolling through YouTube, just trying to brush up on some skills, and I found this Grayscale Gorilla tutorial I thought was really cool. I just sort of wanted to share the information that I learned. I wanted to also highlight ways to expand on even what they were doing. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to just start by teaching the technique. Then we're going to apply it to a cube shape and see where we can take it. So to start, we're going to grab a plane just so it's flat. Let's go ahead and turn on our shading lines. We're actually going to want to bump the geometry down a lot, but let's just drop it to 2 and 2. We just want these crisp lines down the middle and our edges. Put that plane into an atom array. That's just going to outline all of our geometry. So if we zoom in, all of our lines that were just highlighted are now turned into shapes and objects and polygons. I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller. The pipe radius to be 1 and the sphere radius to be 2. Then we're going to go ahead into our deformers and grab a bevel deformer. Now make this a child of the plane. And when we go to our component mode, we're going to want to switch from edges to points. But now what we're going to do is increase our offset. And we're going to just kind of find something that we kind of like, going somewhere kind of in the middle. I really like the number 47, so I'm just going to set my offset to 47, right? Now copy that bevel deformer and make that a second child of our plane. You want them to be equal children. You don't want the bevel to be a child of the bevel. You want them to be both children of the plane. What this does is it puts a bevel on your bevel. We're going to decrease this offset segment because I don't like how these cross, and I don't think that looks clean personally. See, I kind of like this shape right here. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to repeat the process and do it again. Copy and paste your bevel, make it a child of your plane, and that's going to bevel our second bevel. Is decrease these segments, because if you see here and even over here, we just have, geometry crossing geometry. We're going to decrease our segments again until we get something a little cleaner that we like. I'm going to make it even smaller. This looks kind of cool. Drop that down. Actually 11. I like the number 11 a lot too. And this doesn't look super crazy yet, but what we're going to do actually is go to our second bevel. You can actually do this with all of your bevels and just experiment, get different effects, but we're gonna go to our second bevel and increase our subdivisions. That's gonna add more geometry and increase how intricate our pattern is going to be. So let's just add it. Now look at that. It's already a little bit smoother. We're noticing a little bit of crossing right here. I want to take that down because I don't want to cross. And we probably have to decrease this size just a little bit because we're getting some more crossing. Let's just make that 11. And then what's really cool is when we go to our third bevel, if we increase those subdivisions, we're going to create more and more knots within our geometry. Now this is our basic shape, right? And some really cool stuff that you can do with this, for instance, maybe let's grab a displacer and make that a child of our plane. Let's just add some noise, scale it up a little bit. Let's add a little bit of animation and just see what happens. Now if you look closely, you can see it's starting to move. It's pretty cool. Just one quick, easy little cool thing that we can do. But let's see what we do when we can apply this same concept to other geometry. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. The example that I showed in my video was a cube. So we're going to add a cube, make this the child of the atom array, grab our deformers and make them children of the cube. We can delete the plane. And now look at this awesome shape we have. Now next, let's get into how I animated my scene. Now first, I just added a sphere. Let's change from standard to isosahedron. If you're using Octane like me, turn render perfect off. Let's bump up our segments. I like 74, it's just a weird number for me. Let's start adding materials. I'm just going to do a simple white and a simple black, just like my animation. So actually, I think I'm gonna make this a diffuse, just so it's a flat white, and this is just going to be our thread color. I'm just gonna put that on the atom array, and then I want a shiny black for our sphere. So we're just gonna go ahead and make this black. Let's make this extra shiny. And add this on top of our sphere. I added just a really simple background by going and grabbing a texture environment and putting in a gradient. Let's edit our gradient colors. Let's do something blue. Is it too late to change my mind to purple? No, it's not. Let's get a light purple in there too. And I'm just gonna change the orientation of our gradient just to make it a little bit more interesting. One really interesting thing you can do to your gradients too is actually add turbulence. So if we bump the turbulence up a little bit, you'll see it's going to kind of make a cloudy look, things look a little more dramatic. I actually kind of like that, but let's bump it down a little bit, maybe 21. I just kind of like how you can see it in the reflections here. Let's add a light. Just a regular octane light. I actually want this to be a lot smaller. Go to details, outer radius, bring it down some, and just back it up. So actually, let's just boost this a little bit. I always add a color texture here because it makes it a little bit brighter and it gives me control later. If I wanted, maybe let's make this light red and see how that looks. It's kind of cool, right? But for the sake of this tutorial, we're gonna leave it white. Let's figure out how to animate our shape. I'm actually going to animate this by adding a vibrate tag. So we're gonna right click our atom array, go to Cinema 4D tags, and go down to our vibrate tag. Once we get to our vibrate tag, this will allow us to move our object when it's on. So if we enable position for one, this is gonna be dramatic. So let's just drop this down to maybe 11, 11, and 11. It'll just move it 11 centimeters on each axis, not at the same time, but randomly. So we'll watch the example. You see how it's moving just around. This isn't exactly what we want. We want for it to actually rotate instead of move. So let's enable our rotation. And right now you see it's only moving on our x-axis by up to 30 degrees. If I wanted to rotate on all axes, but again, I want to start with something a little bit slower and see if we want something faster. So let's just go 7, 7, and 7. Now this provides us a relatively smooth animation, but it's still kind of fast for my liking. So we're gonna actually drop this frequency down to 1. Okay, this is starting to look pretty good. I think I want to move a little bit slower, so I'm gonna drop this down to 0.5. Okay, nice. But I actually want it to rotate more, so I'm gonna boost these to maybe 21, 21, 21. I think that looks really smooth. We want this to loop. Extend this to maybe 5 seconds. We're going to make our key interpolation linear. Go back to our vibrate tag, and we're actually gonna set these at 0. Set our keyframe. Go to about halfway. And then you might want to increase your degrees a little bit more because it's going to take a little bit of time to get into it. So I'm going to just go 34 here. And then set a keyframe. Go to the end of the animation. Drop it back at 0. Set the final keyframe, and let's see how it goes. It's moving a little bit slow, and I'll tell you why. It's because we have all these subdivisions turned on our bevels. So I'm just gonna turn this down for now because it's the least detailed, well, it's the most detailed one, but it's the least noticeable. Now I'm just gonna play this in our viewport and see how that goes. Okay, we're getting some really good movement here. I like this a lot. Let's see how it ends. Wow, look at that. Perfect loop. That's exactly what we want. I'm thinking maybe of speeding this up just a little bit. Let's do 0.74. Let's go. Okay, I'm starting to like the speed a little bit, but now I actually want to increase the amount of space that it moves in. So let's try 47 degrees across the board. Reset our keyframe and let's try it out. I like how dramatic that got, but let's just try to boost it again just a little bit more. Maybe we'll try 74 now. Start from the beginning. I think that looks great. Next, we're gonna add a camera. Go to my camera tag, I'm gonna go post-processing. I know everybody is annoyed at Octane users about this, but I love that bloom power. About to make that about 47. Glare power, maybe 2.1. When you're using Octane, it puts everything in direct lighting. But we render things with path tracing because it analyzes the shadows better. And instead of getting dark shadows, you get shadows the color of the objects what they would actually be more similar to in real life. You're gonna do a still shot. A lot of my still shots, I just use about 2,000 samples. We're gonna drop this down to 8 and 8 for our specular and diffuse depth. GI clamp never needs to be this high. Let's drop this down to 1. And let's increase our parallel samples to the max as well as our max tile samples. Go to our render settings, Octane renderer. Let's go change our size, 1K by 1K. Instead of doing a still frame, let's render the full animation. And then next, I think we need to add our micro floaties. That's what the little floating objects are called. And actually, micro floaties are a tool that this guy named Joel made, probably back in like 2012. He made it at first for like medical animations where, you know, you might be looking inside the bloodstream or something like that, and there's like floating particles. But then he made it available for download for the Cinema 4D community. But it's actually gone down, and nobody could really find the download link anymore. But I actually still have the micro floaty Cinema 4D file. I'll actually include this in a download link because it's unavailable, and it's really a great tool for everybody. This is our micro floaty rig right here. I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna post it in here. And then you can start to see the scene get populated with these micro floaties. They're just little floating objects. And when you go to them, you open up your rig, click on micro floaties, and these are all of the parameters you can play with. The floater area is how much space they have to exist in. The tighter it gets, you know, the more, the larger they get and the more condensed they get. It defaults around 3,000, and generally I think that looks really good. Even if we go to 5,000, that looks good. Floater size changes the size of the things that are floating. Decrease that to almost nothing, but let's make it about 27. Now this is the count of how many across each axis. This is pretty self-explanatory. We bring this down. There's none on our x-axis, none on our y-axis, none on our z-axis. So I think there's just one right here. But let's increase this back to 10 because 10 is usually pretty good. Now this is how you animate them with your floater speed and your turbulence. Your turbulence kind of determines how quickly they move in relation to a scene around each other. And your floater speed is just how fast they move sort of individually. So let's decrease these to 0, and you'll see we have no movement here. Let's increase our floater speed a lot, and they just start moving around. Let's increase our turbulence. It's like wind. It's how they interact with each other. And this is pretty fast, but so let's just drop our floater speed down some. And let's drop our turbulence down some too. 21 and 11. Let's see how that looks. It actually looks pretty good, but I actually want to turn up my turbulence a little bit, maybe 21 and 21. Yeah, now they have a little bit more life to them. And then you can play around with the random seed to change how, you know, how they're affected. Try it till you like. And yeah, that's basically how you make this animation. Really quick and easy. But let's actually try to do something a little bit more complicated. If you want to go further in depth on this technique, we have an expanded tutorial as well as project files available in the Design Reserve store. Link will be in the description below.